Hello and thanks for joining us. You're watching our mid-morning edition of Arirang News on this Friday, April 3rd, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Shin Se-min. Before we get started, these are the stories we're following at this hour. 1 million and counting. The number of coronavirus cases across the world tops 1 million, with the death toll soaring past 50,000. Another grim milestone as the world struggles to cope with a pandemic. Still, the virus's disregard for borders and who it infects shows no sign of abating. President Trump steps into the oil price war, saying Saudi Arabia and Russia would cut back 10 million barrels and maybe more to stabilize the market. That tweet sending oil prices soaring 20%. South Korea remembers the victims of the April 3rd Jeju incident that started 72 years ago on this day. We take you to the memorial ceremony taking place on Korea's southern island of Jeju. Our top story this morning, a memorial ceremony for the victims of the April 3rd Jeju incident is taking place as we speak at the April 3rd Peace Park on the country's southern island of Jeju. But in light of the coronavirus outbreak, the ceremony is being held in a smaller scale than usual, with roughly 150 people attending, including families of the victims and related civic groups. The elderly and people with underlying illnesses are not taking part, but those in attendance are being seated 2 meters apart from one another to abide by social distancing guidelines amid the COVID-19 outbreak. An unwelcome milestone has been reached, but it's one many were fearing would come sooner than later. Countries around the world would have now reported more than 1 million coronavirus cases as the deadly pandemic continues to spread. More specifically, the number of cases in the U.S. is skyrocketing, and experts are now saying the coronavirus death toll in Italy is probably much higher than the confirmed figures. Our Choi Jung-yun with the details.
More than 1 million people around the world are currently infected, have died from, or have recovered from COVID-19. This is just 3 months since the first case was reported in the Chinese city of Wuhan in December of last year. According to Johns Hopkins University on Friday, more than 180 countries now have cases of the virus. It only took a week for the number of cases to double from 500,000 on March 26th, showing how the coronavirus is spreading at an exponential rate. The global death toll has also surpassed 52,000, a figure predicted by the World Health Organization just 2 days ago. Among the countries affected by this unseen killer, the United States has the most recorded infections, accounting for around a fifth of the world's cases. So far, more than 240,000 Americans have contracted the virus. As a result, the U.S. government is imposing even stronger measures to contain the virus and is cracking down on Americans defying stay-at-home orders. Close to 40 states have announced self-quarantine orders that are to last for weeks, locking down around 90% of the country's population. State governments are also trying to close businesses deemed non-essential that fought tooth and nail to stay open. Authorities also say individuals who breach shelter-in-place orders could face up to a year behind bars and a $5,000 fine. Italy, which rapidly emerged as the epicenter of the virus in Europe, has the world's highest death toll, reaching around 14,000 as of Thursday. Italy's COVID-19 death rate is also around 12%, which is the highest in the world. However, analysis by the Wall Street Journal says Italy's coronavirus death toll is likely much higher than official figures indicate. It says the number don't factor in the many people who died without ever being tested for the virus. Choi Jung-yun, Arirang News.
Some 100 South Korean nationals that had been stranded in Morocco are expected to arrive at Incheon International Airport in the coming hours. According to the Foreign Ministry, they are flying on a direct flight specially laid on by Morocco. Originally, the Moroccan government reviewed sending cargo planes to carry medical supplies from South Korea, but as South Korean government asked for the return of its nationals, Morocco's king changed the flight to a passenger plane. Also returning next week, South Koreans in Russia. The two countries have agreed to send back some 270 business people and international students on a special flight from Moscow next Tuesday. Meanwhile, a second government-chartered plane from Italy arrived in South Korea on Thursday, carrying some 200 Korean nationals. From the first flight that arrived a day earlier, 11 people showed symptoms, with one testing positive for COVID-19. Those arrivals have been moved to government-designated facilities for quarantine. As the entire world is being hammered by the coronavirus outbreak, world leaders are turning to South Korea for help. President Moon Jae-in has so far held COVID-19 consultations with 21 leaders since the outbreak, and this on top of the G20 video conference. And it's not stopping there. The top office says it's prepping for an ASEAN +3 online summit in the battle against the virus. Our Kim Mo-gyan reports.
In the past month, South Korean President Moon Jae-in has spoken on the phone with the leaders of some 15 countries, mostly about ways to cooperate in dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. On Thursday, President Moon spoke with the Colombian President Iván Duque, who expressed hope that his country could buy Korean-made medical supplies such as respirators and test kits. According to the Blue House, President Moon assured his counterpart that South Korea will actively share its relevant experience and clinical data with Colombia and other countries and will also ship them the supplies they need. Moon also emphasized the importance of cooperation and solidarity in the international community, noting that COVID-19 is not a problem confined to any single country. The president had a similar conversation on the phone this evening with the Prime Minister of Denmark. 6 other leaders, including those of Myanmar and Brunei, have sent President Moon letters in the past month asking that South Korea share information and its experience in containing infectious diseases. Also, to promote cooperation on the pandemic, the Blue House says President Moon is working to hold a special ASEAN +3 video summit in the near future. Late last month, the leaders of the G20 member states signed a joint declaration vowing to work together and share all relevant information and data to overcome COVID-19. Kim Mo-gyan, Arirang News.
There is no question that the aviation industry has been one of the hardest hit sectors by the global COVID-19 pandemic. With planes grounded or flying well under capacity, there have been mass layoffs of airline staff as well as third-party contractors, such as those who make the in-flight meals and fuel the planes. Our Kim Hyo-sun with the details.
Korean air shelves for in-flight meals are almost bare. Demand for meals has plummeted as some 90% of international commercial flights have been canceled due to the global coronavirus pandemic. Fewer than 3,000 in-flight meals were made daily last month, a significant drop from the 80,000 prepared each day during the same month last year. This has led to nearly 1,000 employees at this subcontractor being made redundant. Only around 800 workers remain.
I joined this company 30 years ago, but this is unprecedented. I could have never imagined this. We've gone through the Asian financial crisis, SARS, and the global financial crisis, but this is something else.
The outbreak has also inflicted significant financial losses on the aviation fueling industry. The Incheon International Airport Corporation entrusted the airport's fueling facility to a private carrier, which is now experiencing a plunge in demand for aviation fuel. The company needs to pay $2.4 million for monthly rent, but its sales in March were just over $800,000. While the government said it will lower rent by 20%, the company says it's not enough.
The demand for aviation fuel plummeted following the shutdown of many flights, but we are increasingly burdened as our inventory piles up. Our sales have dropped by over 70%.
The unanticipated and unprecedented effects of the COVID-19 pandemic has sent the aviation industry into a tailspin, and the ripple effects are equally painful for the third-party contractors that work hand-in-hand with the airlines. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he expects Saudi Arabia and Russia to reach a deal in the coming days to end a price war that has taken an enormous toll on the global oil industry. His announcement Thursday caused crude prices to skyrocket. Our Lee Seung-jae with more.
There has been a massive drop in oil prices due to the global outbreak of COVID-19. But U.S. President Donald Trump on Thursday tweeted that he had brokered a deal with Saudi Arabia and Russia to cut output and arrest the price rout. President Trump said he spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman adding the two nations are expected to cut output by 10 million barrels a day. That amount represents about 1/10 of global supply. While President Trump signaled the cuts could amount to as much as 15 million barrels a day, there was no mention on whether the U.S., the world's largest oil producer, would contribute to the reductions, as such move is forbidden by U.S. antitrust legislation. Russia's Energy Minister Alexander Novak said Thursday that Moscow was no longer planning to raise output and is ready to cooperate with OPEC and other producers to stabilize the market. On the same day, Saudi Arabia called for an emergency meeting of OPEC and non-OPEC oil producers, saying it also wants to reach a fair agreement to stabilize the market. Over the past few weeks, global oil demand has dropped by a third, or roughly 30 million barrels a day, as some 3 billion people have been put on lockdown in a bid to slow the spread of COVID-19. The sharp decline in demand sent oil prices to their lowest levels since 2002, close to $20 a barrel. The price drop dealt a huge blow to the U.S. shale oil industry, which cannot compete at such low prices. President Trump's announcement of a looming deal sent crude prices soaring by up to 45% at one point during trading on Thursday. 이승재, Arirang News.
Now, that memorial ceremony for the victims of the April 3rd Jeju incident is currently taking place as we speak at the April 3rd Peace Park on the southern island of Jeju. In moments' time, we are expected to hear from President Moon Jae-in, who has traveled to Jeju to mark this solemn day that, even after more than 70 years, is considered one of the darkest moments in South Korea's modern history. Now, before we go live to Jeju, here's a recap of that sheer scale of the atrocities that were committed against the island's residents during more than a year of terror. Our Kim Jae-hee with more.
The April 3rd Jeju incident is one of the most tragic events of South Korea's modern history. More than 7 decades ago, from 1948 to 1954, an anti-communist suppression campaign was carried out by the South Korean government on Jeju Island. An estimated up to 30,000 civilians on Jeju, nearly 10% of the island's population at the time, were killed. The government at the time distorted the incidents as a communist riot and covered up the truth behind the event. Years passed and the tragic incident faded from people's memories. Surviving family members of the victims shed tears in the dark, remembering the painful period of turmoil on the island, with many failing to recover the remains of their loved ones. An official apology was only issued in 2003 under the late Nomuyan administration. President Moon Jae-in pledged to continue the late President No's legacy and offered an emotional apology to the people of Jeju in 2018. And just last year, in 2019, the South Korean police and the Defense Ministry apologized for the first time. A state-organized memorial ceremony has been held every year since 2014, when April 3rd was designated as a national commemorative day. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
And in moments' time, we will be cutting live to that scene in Jeju Island where the memorial service is taking place. It looks like we are watching some sort of the video footage of remembering the April 3rd Jeju incident. And soon after that, we will be cutting over to President Moon Jae-in for his remarks from this site. It will be the second time for President Moon Jae-in attending the event himself after he has visited the site 2 years ago in 2018. And President Moon, during that memorial service, has called for South Koreans to take an honest look at this historical tragedy while getting over the internal conflict based on ideological labels and moving towards harmony. He's also hoped that the annual ceremony serve as a momentum for the truth of Jeju April 3rd incident to be set straight so that no one denies, undermines, or disparages the tragedy that took place.
유채꽃처럼 만발하게 제주의 봄은 피어날 것입니다.
And next, here's Mr. President with his commemorative speech.
The surviving victims and bereaved families of the Jeju April 3rd incident, citizens of Jeju Province, April 3rd is a day of great sorrow for Jeju. It is not only a day for sorrow for Jeju, but a major pain in the modern history of the Republic of Korea. Jeju dreamed of true independence beyond the liberation. It longed for peace and unification going beyond division. The people here on Jeju strived to secure the pride of our people, wishing to restore the country that has been returned to our hands. However, because of the very fact that they had such dreams before anyone else, Jeju was confronted with brutal deaths. The desperate desire for the establishment of a united government became a trap of ideology splitting us. If we dream of peace and unification now, and if we seek for reconciliation and unity, we must partake in the grief of Jeju. Going back to the day of April 3rd in Jeju, we need to disclose what was fabricated at the site of massacre, and what put a bridle on us, and what led to the death of Jeju. We must disclose each and every one of them. Only when we re-begin our modern history can we truly heal the pains of Jeju, and can we be freed from the hostility and confrontation that have troubled us for the past 72 years. Just like Jeju that fell down like camellia flowers for peace, we hope that Jeju can be revived to complete this peace. Deeply in our hearts, we engrave the values of human rights, reconciliation, and unity that have left behind by the victims. I send my deepest condolences to those who have been sacrificed at the face of national violence and ideologies, and I extend my deepest gratitude to the bereaved families and the citizens of Jeju Province for overcoming the times of pain and making today's Jeju possible. Fellow Koreans, residents of Jeju Province, at a very grave and difficult time when we need to overcome the COVID-19 outbreak, we meet here again on April 3rd. I feel the desperate need for solidarity and cooperation, and once again realize how this can help us to become stronger. The April 3rd incident has been distorted and neglected, yet it has ceaselessly opened the path for reconciliation and healing. Back in 2013, the Association of the Bereaved Families of the April 3rd incident and the Jeju Veteran Police Association finally declared reconciliation, and they paid their respect annually at the Chunghon Grave and the April 3rd Peace Park. Last year, servicemen and policemen stood in front of the fallen heroes. They officially apologized to the citizens of Jeju Province who have been sacrificed and their bereaved families. They also vowed to take part in recovering the grace and healing the wounds of the April 3rd incident. The people of Jeju and bereaved families also took their hands of reconciliation and harmony. The spirit of reconciliation and harmony is also uniting the hearts of the residents of Jeju Province amid the COVID-19 outbreak. Under the campaign titled We Protect Our Own Neighborhood, 43 towns and 60 organizations in Jeju are taking part in the quarantine efforts at some 1,700 multi-use facilities. And the Semaul Women's Association and volunteer centers made masks and distributed them to the neighborhood and local communities. And the campaign councils and Jeju United Youth Association also made hand sanitizers and gave them out to the citizens of Jeju Island. The citizens of Jeju Island are sharing the pain of the entire nation. To Daegu and Gyeongsangbuk-do Province, they sent donations and supplies including protective face masks. The self-voluntary quarantine activities of the people here in Jeju have become role models for other municipalities, including Seoul, Gyeonggi, Incheon, Naju, Busan, and Ulsan. I extend my sincere gratitude to the people of Jeju for standing at the forefront, showing solidarity and peace, especially at such difficult times. Resolving the April 3rd incident is not an issue of politics or ideology. It is a matter of universal and humanitarian attitude that respects people and sympathizing with the pains of our own neighbors. Based on the universal standard set by the international community, we shall settle our wrongdoings of the past that resulted in human rights violations and abuse. And as President, I vow that my government will exert its full efforts to enable Jeju April 3rd incident to be turned into universal human values of forgiveness and harmony, peace, and human rights. Fellow Koreans, residents of Jeju Province, truth is the foundation of forgiving and reconciliation. It is the power to heal the wounds that have been resulted from the hostilities and ideology. In March this year, marking the 16th anniversary of the issuing of Jeju April 3rd incident investigative report, one additional report was published. The incidents of Jeju Massacre, missing of convicted people, preventing custody, and the results of excavating the remains of the victims have been recorded. The damages were also recorded. The education circles and students disclosed the damages that have been done, and the damages inflicted by soldiers, policemen, and right-wing organizations were also investigated thoroughly. I would like to thank the Jeju April 3rd Peace Foundation for your efforts. In the high school Korean history textbook to be used starting from this year, the April 3rd incident is explained in more detail. It states clearly that it was a sacrifice of civilians due to state power, explaining that violent means were used in the process of repression. It also entails a spirit of reconciliation and coexistence, along with the efforts put forth by the citizens of Jeju to reveal the truth, and thus I believe it is very meaningful. Jeju is no longer alone. The truth, sorrow, and the efforts for coexistence and forgiveness of the April 3rd incident will never be forgotten among the generations to come. It will become a beacon of unity, peace, life, and human rights for our own future generations. Based on the foundation of truth, we need to embrace the pain of the victims and their bereaved families. It is the very duty of the nation to revitalize their lives and dignity. When truth meets justice, it can lead to reconciliation and harmony. Making peace not only a historical just, but also in legal terms is indeed what the nation must do. Helping those who have been innocently sacrificed is the principal issue of questioning the reason for the nation's existence. The Jeju April 3rd special law that includes issues of compensation and indemnification, which become the basis of the complete resolution of the incident, is still sitting at the National Assembly. The victims of the incident are only compensated partially through individual litigations, and they only receive medical support funds and daily support funds from the government. There are no compensation based on legal grounds. As a president, I feel heavily burdened to see the process taking too long. However, we are taking steps towards achieving this legal justice. Last year, 18 surviving prisoners of the incident have won retrial as well as a criminal trial for compensation, raising the injustice in the military ruling of the April 3rd incident. At the courtroom number 201 of the Jeju District Court, people shouted, "We no longer are people with guilt." Justice Minister Choo Mi-ae, who is here today, discovered the list of prisoners from the National Archives of Korea when she was a lawmaker, and this pleaded for the innocence of these people. During the past year, out of them, Hyun Chang-yong, Kim Kyung-in, Kim Sun-hwa, and Song Seok-jin have passed away. But the country still has not been able to show its duty and responsibility to the surviving victims and their bereaved families. The surviving victims are aging, and the first-generation bereaved families are also over the age of 70. At a time when the witnesses who remember the very day of the incident are aging, we have no time to lose. Martin Luther King has once said, "Justice too long delayed is justice denied." During the course of liberation, division, and war, we faced numerous difficulties that we needed to resolve and overcome. But my government will continue to make efforts to realize practical compensation and indemnification when the victims and bereaved families are still alive. I also call for the political circles and the National Assembly to have continued support and interest in the amendment of the Jeju April 3rd special law. The government will do its part swiftly for the legislative process. Back in 2018, my government reinitiated the works of additional reporting of the victims and bereaved families that had come to a halt. The Committee for Revealing the Truth and Recovering the Dignity of Victims of Jeju April 3rd incident assessed and reviewed the victims and bereaved families who have been newly reported throughout the 6 rounds of reporting processes, and has newly acknowledged a total of 19 more victims and 7,606 new bereaved families. In particular, Song Sang-sun, who was living under great trauma after witnessing the death of the father, was recognized as the first victim with trauma stress disorders out of the victims of the April 3rd incident. Going forward, not a single victim will be left out from the reporting process. They will be given opportunities for additional reporting. We will continue to excavate the remains of the victims and DNA identifications so that they can be returned to their family members. Starting from April this year, in order to treat the pains and wounds of the surviving victims and bereaved families, the April 3rd Trauma Center will be up and running. My government will continue to support to enable Jeju residents to overcome this feeling of long-lived resentment and disgrace. Once related legislation is enacted, we will prepare to elevate the facility into a national trauma center. The surviving victims and bereaved families of the Jeju April 3rd incident, citizens of Jeju province, and fellow Koreans, the April 3rd incident is our past but also our future. The efforts for the reconciliation and peace of our people started on that very day. The dream that Jeju dreamt of on that day is indeed our dreams of today. As camellia flowers fade, the grief is long-lived, but we have today because we have endured such pain and sorrow. I will not speak of forgetting the sorrow yet, but I will ask you to together usher in a tomorrow that Jeju has long dreamed of amid this sorrow. My administration, together with the residents of Jeju, bereaved families, and the public, will take steps forward to achieve reconciliation, harmony, peace, and human rights. The stories of truth, justice, and reconciliation that began from April 3rd incident will be left for our future generations at heart-touching history, where hope was found amid sorrow. Thank you very much.
There you have it. That was President Moon Jae-in giving a speech at the memorial service of April 3rd Jeju incident taking place on the southern island of Jeju. Just to go over some of the tips that we just heard from President, he reiterated that it is the duty of the state to embrace the bereaved families and renew their lives and dignity. And he also regretted some of the slowing processes at the National Assembly and promised a swift handling of revising special bill on the April 3rd Jeju incident at the parliament so compensations can be made for the victims and the members of the bereaved family. Some of his last remarks, he said April 3rd Jeju incident is not only the past, but also the future of the country of South Korea. And he also touted the people of Jeju, saying that the people's efforts from the Jeju April 3rd incident is coexistence and peace began on this very day 72 years ago. Now that does it for us at this hour on Arirang News, but more news lineup coming up at noon Korea time, so do join us again then. Thank you for watching and goodbye.